Right. Well, welcome everyone. This is podcast number 2 in the stress discussions that we're having with Dick Thompson from MACV SOG and High Performing Systems, and with the MVG Military Veteran Gamers Charity. So I just quickly introduce people. We have Dolly, who's a combat veteran from the British Army, a friend of ours in Savage Game Design, and we've got Dick Thompson, who's former colonel, lieutenant colonel, US Special Forces. And then we've got Jordan from Military and Veteran Gamers. And do you want to introduce your team?
Sure. My name is Jordan, Staff Sergeant, retired, combat veteran. We have Andrew Howard, operations. We also have Austin Ellsworth, which is Hell's our community manager, and Austin, also known as Rage, from our peer-to-peer support program.
Great. And could you just quickly, in a short sentence, explain what Military and Veteran Gamers Charity does? I know it's a big ask.
Well, we're a group of veterans that got together. Lots of us are gamers. Decided that we could do a lot more as a group, have that spirit of corps, and we currently give out technologies to veterans and active duty soldiers that include anything from computer games to actual computers themselves. And our main mission is healing through gaming, as well as we love to see transitioning soldiers that come from the service to becoming new veterans, and helping them out with either VA or consultations in our peer-to-peer support program.
Right, thank you. And we got you together with Dick Thompson and High Performing Systems to bring the Arsenal stress resilience system to veterans and military. Dick, could you just explain that a little bit?
Yes, we're working together to provide another way for veterans to be able to get a snapshot of their life balance at this point. The Arsenal looks at, 7 best practices, and gives you an assessment of where you are today. And then based on your results, it's going to give you a list of things that you might want to work on to improve nutrition, for example, exercise, awareness, your support group, things like that. Our research over the past 20 or so years has shown that the more balanced you can get it, the more resilience you tend to have when a stressful event occurs. So if we have a pandemic and after a week or so you become concerned about being able to get toilet paper, if your stress resilience is high, you can manage that without panicking. If your stress resilience is low, then you're going to go out and start hoarding and maybe doing some things that are irrational, because it's going to create some anxiety, may create fear that causes certain behaviors to take place. And in the last couple of years, we've all experienced that. With the vets, we want to be able to work with MVG to be able to provide a vet the assessment for free so that they don't have to pay for it. And, that's one of our big goals. We help each other out. We're all vets. We need to take care of each other, watch each other's six. And our company has an assessment tool that's very powerful and would be very helpful. And we use it with vets all the time, but we want to get into MVG where you have a very large number that we can make it available to.
And can I bring Austin in here as you're the peer-to-peer manager at MVG? So you'll be able to help veterans that are interested in taking the Arsenal survey?
Yeah, I think that it would be huge for that to approximate a number of tickets that we see on a monthly basis of people that are dealing with an anxiety issue or a high stress issue it's insurmountable. 80 to 85% maybe is probably accurate. So having that tool or something else in the toolbox to help assist us with that would be insurmountable and appreciated widely.
Great, and thank you. And we'll put the link in the description on how to access that through the Discord at MVG. Well, thanks, guys. That's a great introduction to why we're all here. We wanted to sort of take stress apart and look at different aspects of it. And this particular podcast, we're going to focus on anxiety. Hopefully, we won't trigger anybody into having a panic attack in this podcast right now. But anxiety can come from anywhere, right? So it could be being worried about being on camera. It could be worried about, facing your classmates at school. It could be about jumping out of an aircraft. It could be related to coming out of the military and fitting back into society. There's all different areas. But Dick, what do you think we generally mean when we talk about anxiety?
Most people, I think, associate it with a threat. There's something out there that I'm afraid of, that I'm worried about, that I'm concerned about. And this occurs on different magnitudes. Like with COVID, in the beginning, being concerned about not having enough toilet paper, that can create anxiety. The anxiety then plays out as behaviors. So it might cause you to behave in a way that you go out and you begin to hoard toilet paper, paper towels, paper products, and various other types of things like that. Fear can come into play. Fear usually creates a much more immediate reaction, and it all revolves around stress. And think about stress is not the event that occurs. Stress is the physiological and psychological response of your body and your brain to this event, to this trigger that occurs. And all kinds of things trigger responses like that. Your stress is constantly going up and down all through the day. And we know that when your stress goes up, your IQ, your emotional intelligence, and your effectiveness at making decisions, all three go down. With a lot of our people, we tell them, just tattoo that on the back of your eyelids so that every time you blink, you know that if your stress level is going up, you're not going to make as good of decisions as you would when your stress level is down. And you can begin to manage some of these triggers to be able to reduce your anxiety, reduce your fear. So, that's some of what we'll be talking about today.
Thank you, Dick. Can we all think of examples of either ourselves or friends where we've experienced anxiety? Dolly's got his hand up.
Literally, whilst Dick was talking, I got a message about my work tomorrow in central London, and they've pulled it forward an hour from what it should have been, as in just now. So that's having to rearrange my parking that I've had to pre-book and stuff like that. And that momentary panic of, oh Christ, right, now I need to adjust my plan. I need to wake up earlier. I need to leave earlier, just because I get that anxiety about being late for an appointment I've committed to. And I get just overwhelming thing of like, if I'm not 5 minutes early, I'm late. So I'll always arrive like 15 minutes earlier than I actually need to, just so I've got that 5 minutes with flexibility. It's so, little things like that.
Yeah, that's a good example. And is that because from the military, your military experience, you're setting an expectation on yourself, a standard on yourself that's quite high, and then you don't want to. You have a fear, in a sense, of not meeting that expectation.
Yeah, well, I think that is part of it, because you get this level of if you turn up late to a parade, you will be ran until you're sick. You know, you don't turn up late to a parade, and if you're 5 minutes early, you're late. So it's then turns into this 5 minutes before, 5 minutes before. So whenever you tell your lads what time they've got to meet up, you tell them 5 minutes before, 5 minutes before you were told. In the end, you're meeting up about 2 hours before you should do, because everyone's just been adding this 5 minutes on as it's been going down the chain, and the guys at the bottom are always there stupidly early. But it's just so you get that level of flexibility, so no one comes under the cosh, so to speak.
Have we got any other examples of anxiety? Austin? Yeah.
I get anxiety all the time being active duty, just all the baloney I have to deal with all the time. And every time I get a phone call or leadership walks out of their office and looks at me, I'm like, oh, what is it this time? Are they going to yell at me because they think my hair's out of place? Just what is it this time? Yesterday it was, I'm sick right now with a cold, and they came out of the office. They were fuming. Turns out, I guess higher leadership up at the wing heard I was sick at work, and they were, well, why is he at work? Well, we're in the military. We still work when we're sick. That's just the way it's always been. Now they're like, no, go home, get out of here. You shouldn't be here. It's like, thank you. To not know what was going to go down, stressing out, like every time. It's ridiculous.
So I guess from that, it's working. It doesn't matter where you're working, whether you're military or not, but working in a place where there are sort of rules that are enforced through people staring at you or making comments, or just a kind of a critical culture. Do you think that's probably more the source of that anxiety? Is that there's going to be criticism, that whether it's negative or positive, but in this case, holding you to a standard, expecting things of you. So it sort of puts you in an unknown area where you always feel like you need to perform.
I can agree with that. I think part of it's also just the double standards that are involved. I'm one of the best people in our unit, if not in my career field for the Air Force, and I'm held to an entirely different standard than everybody else. I see it all the time. Like, they'll yell at me for this one thing, and I see 10 other people walk by and not a thing is said to any of them. It's like, what? Really?
Right.
Yeah,
So
we're also, excuse me, we're also in a COVID environment right now. So in the past, before COVID, yeah, if you were in the military, you expected to come in, you work sick, you do whatever it takes, you stay up as long as it's necessary. But now there's an anxiety in the environment that says, wow, if I hear someone cough, if I hear someone hoarse that might have a cold, this person might have COVID. So now it generates that anxiety, it generates the fear. I don't want to be around you. I don't want you around us. You need to go home. We need to, you need to go take your temperature, you need to isolation, go take a COVID test, whatever. So we get this, strong reaction from the anxiety just based on that. You walk in a grocery store and you hear someone cough, and they might have on a mask. You hear them cough, you move 2 aisles over to get away from them. You don't want to be around them. And they might not be sick at all. They just have a frog in their throat like I do right now. They're not sick. So yeah, anxiety has an impact on how we behave, and it changes a lot of the rules.
I think I'd love to reference a little bit of my personal past here. Obviously, anxiety really affects everyone. However, sometimes it's almost a diagnosis of anxiety, and then we start getting to a whole new level. one of my big, I guess, triggers is I always hold myself to a higher standard than what is expected of me, whether that be in personal or work or whatever it might be. And then I start overthinking everything, and I start thinking I'm not doing something good enough, or I'm going to disappoint someone. And then this anxiety starts building and building, and it's a almost self-destructive. And then you get to this point where, you know, your face goes numb, you can't really feel anything going on, and you almost have a panic attack because the anxiety builds so much. And at that point, it's hard to get out of. Luckily, I've gotten better, especially using mindfulness exercises to be able to kind of center myself and ground myself and figure out, okay, this is where I am, this is what's happening. But yeah, I'm sure that we're going to move into did this kind of start in the military? And I honestly think, yeah, being held to a higher standard, and, you know, always worried that you're going to disappoint, you know, your senior leadership, and, get smoked for it, or get demeaned for it. And now you're kind of moving that into your personal life, 8 years after leaving the military, and you're still doing it.
That's a really great example. Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, I'd love the caveat on that. I would have to say is CBT, or cognitive behavior therapy, is probably the best tool I've ever used to help combat against anxiety. The way I think and how I think about stuff and how I approach after going through that, I have to say is it's been a life changer. You hit nail on the hammer with that one when you were talking about jumping out of an airplane. I just recalled back when I was in airborne. I'm afraid of heights. That was the most stressful moment. It was like, oh man, I got to go in this janky airplane and jump out of it. I did great. One thing I always like to do is I just send it and hope for the best. Three times was great. The fourth time broke my foot, but you know what? It was still a good time. I got over it.
Yeah, I think you can get over fears by being exposed to them, and I think it's probably fair to say. Dick, you were involved in special forces training, in the management, administration, and assessment side. So all the training people are doing, it's a big part of it is almost pre-exposure therapy to prevent people from exploding into anxiety in these difficult situations, right?
The repetition plays a big role. The more I get exposed to it, the more I do it, the more I get comfortable and confident that I can jump out of the airplane, that I can, do a halo jump out of the airplane, and, other types of dangerous feats. As I do it more and more, I become more and more confident in it, and the anxiety goes down. And just a quick example of the jumping out of the plane, when you do the free fall jumps, there's been a lot of research that looks at where's the fear. And in the beginning, the biggest fear is when you leave the aircraft and you pull the ripcord to deploy the parachute. That's where your heart rate, fear, everything peaks. Once the parachute opens, everything starts to come back down. But then after you start to overcome the fear of it not opening and have confidence in it, your fear starts to go back up again after it opens. Because now the most dangerous part of the jump that's left is your impact with the ground. So as you start to approach the ground, your heart rate, fear, everything starts to go back up, because this is where you're going to get hurt. You got the rucksack hanging on you. You got all the other weight on you. You're going to crash in, and particularly if it's at night, you don't know what you're going to land on: a fence, a tree stump, a rock, a cow, whatever. Yeah. So our anxiety across different types of behavior changes as we use the repetition. And, when I had a team leader in the beginning when I was in SOG that told me after a big firefight that we had, he just looked at me and said, Lieutenant, if you don't learn to change magazines faster when people are shooting at you, you're going to die. And I said, yeah, I think you're right. And I'm definitely going to practice a lot more. It's not as easy to do when someone's shooting at you as it is when you're just standing on the range.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Train as you fight. That's what I always say.
Exactly. Make it as realistic as possible.
So if somebody is experiencing anxiety, and it could be about anything really,
right?
What's the best ways to cope with it? I mean, from what Jordan said about CBT, I've experienced CBT, and I know it works very well because it helps you to recognize your thought processes and to be able to stop thoughts and stop spirals, which is really important in anxiety, because anxiety feeds from both hormone and cognitive. So you've got that flood of hormones going as well as the thinking, and if you can at least deal with the thinking, then you give yourself a bit of a breathing space, and then the hormones will settle down a little bit. So being aware of triggers and aware of critical thoughts and things that are feeding and pushing you into a more anxious state. I can understand how CBT's good. The repetition side, or exposure therapy. Like I know about people get exposed to, say, a tank with a spider in it because they're scared of spiders, a kind of phobia, desensitization. Is it a bit like that, maybe, Dick, in terms of repetition?
Yes, it's sort of like that. But Rage probably has some good examples because he's talking to people every day who are experiencing those, and he's working with them. So I know he's going to have to leave here shortly, so maybe we should give him a chance to jump in.
Yeah, so a lot of the times, the people that we talk to on a daily basis, they do use exposure, particularly whenever we're talking to a combat veteran. That's how they know it. They do, like, if something is giving them horrible anxiety, they'll run with it. They want to see it again and again and again. And you'll see it in their conversations and how they sort of relax out towards the end of the conversation every time. When they rethink about that situation or the bounds of which they're held on that situation, speaking about it and being exposed to it in their mind helps them tremendously, and it calms them down and it makes them rational thinkers, and they can talk to us about it better.
That's great.
Yeah, if I could just add to what Rage is saying, it's helping them calm down. It helps a lot by having someone like Rage there talking with them, someone who can kind of guide them and help keep them calm. If I'm just doing it by myself, then it's more difficult, because it can spiral out of control. But if I've got Rage sitting there with me, to say, why don't let's just take a deep breath for a minute and think about, what you're talking about. Just, the deep breathing, we know activates the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve then starts a calming effect, though, so it helps get you calmed down. So if you've got Rage there as your guide, talking to you, keeping you calmed down, keeping you under control, and he can take you through this experience, multiple times and until you can start to control it yourself. So, powerful tool.
The irony of what you just said there really made me giggle, because obviously we know Austin's called Rage. But what you said is, if you've got Rage as your guide, it can keep you calm.
Yeah.
Sorry, the irony of that is just brilliant.
But yeah, there's something to that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes
I
I
think-
need a little rage to come out
Mm.
so I can start to get it out of my system. But still, if I have Austin rage there with me to help
Yeah.
make sure I don't harm myself or someone else, in the process, and he can start to teach me, here's how you do that. Here's what you think about. Here's where you need to go with it.
We were talking about this the other day. Dolly gave a really good a good example of or an idea that we have a stress cup, and when you're anxious, your cup starts to fill up, and it's kind of constantly filling in the background, and you might not even notice it, but as when you're feeling a bit anxious, it will feed on itself, and it will fill that cup to a point where you might snap. And that snap could result in fear, like an anxiety attack, or it could result in rage or violence or anger towards other people. And we don't often realize at that moment in time that it's down to our reaction. Like Dick said at the beginning of this, it's our reaction to stress that's causing the feelings. It's not the guy beeping his horn at you, or or bumping you with a trolley in the store, or with a crying baby behind you on the airplane, although nobody likes that, but, babies have to cry, especially with the air pressure. But those things happen in the environment all the time, and we normally cope. But if our cup is quite full, so being aware of that sort of stress cup, I think is quite a nice idea, sort of a tool you can have, and to talk to people and say, yeah, my stress cup's 90% full today. My finances have gone to hell in a handbasket, and one of my key workers has quit, and and my back's hurting, and so I'm about 90%, and which means that when somebody questions you about something later, and you'd normally find it maybe mildly irritating, and you'd answer, and you'd be fine, or you might ask them why they're asking you that. You might explode and be really cross. Do you guys recognize that? Yeah.
Yeah. And an adverse question is, each person here has some way to, dump that cup out. They have de-stressors. A lot of us here play video games. Healing through gaming is our motto. That's one of the aspects we do. I know, but you could go fishing. You could just go outside and take 5-10 minutes, get some fresh air. Don't go smoke cigarettes. Cigarettes are bad. Don't do that. It'll just raise your stress levels back up as soon as you want another cigarette. Don't do that. Smoking's bad. But there's a million and one ways you can listen to classical music, or sometimes heavy metal music. It doesn't have to be classical. Whatever your stress relief, working out, it all can be very helpful to fill that, drain that cup. But one thing is taking everything with moderation.
That is true. One thing I would say is having the self-awareness to know when your cup is filling up, and what is in your control to be able to adjust the way it's filling, or, having that sort of self-awareness of looking into yourself and saying, right, so what is actually causing me these dramas at this moment in time? What can I do to minimize that? Or, the cup's still going to be filling up, because let's be brutally honest, we're human. We're not perfect. The cup will always be constantly filling. It's just how you manage that. That's what's quite hard, because especially, military guys, and I can only answer for the British military. But I'll take your word in a minute once you hear what I say about the US military. A lot of the anxieties you have, you don't realize they are anxieties, because everyone has got exactly the same, because you're surrounded by these like-minded individuals. It's seen as normal. The whole thing of PTSD of, oh yeah, have you been having nightmares? Yeah. Have you been having flashbacks? Have you been having sweats? And yeah, I have. What's wrong with that? Everyone's suffering that. So why is that now an issue? And it's the same with anxiety. You all suffer the same anxieties, so you don't notice that you're suffering from anxiety. I don't know if that's just the British military or if that's kind of universal.
Well, you hit a big subject there. PTSD and anxiety are two peas in a pot, man. That they love to feed off each other. Misery loves company, and those definitely there. It's always to the objective. That's why our motto for my unit was to the objective and keeping the mission first. And we keep that mindset even outside the military sometimes with our guys. And it's really hard to de-escalate yourselves sometimes without having someone to lean on or a support program. When you come out, when you're transitioning to becoming a veteran, you lose a lot of your friends, you lose your formation that you stood out in front of every day. And those were your lifelines. And I have to say that you don't actually. A lot of people think that you lose those lifelines, but you don't. There are thousands of others, brothers and sisters in arms out there, as well as people that were willing to take the time, listen, and help and offer those services, as well as, with the Arsenal program, you have a great tool of seeing like a self-reflection on yourself. You can get the help. It's out there, and there are people willing to help you go through these tough times.
So, how does Arsenal relate to the Stress Cup, Dick?
There's a direct relationship between where you come out on those 7 best practices and how full your cup is, and how easily you can pour some out of your cup or empty your cup. So if you're not doing well with those 7 best practices, your cup fills up very easily. It starts to run over. It's hard for you to get any of it out or manage what's there. But the better you are on those 7 best practices, then the easier it is for you to manage it. And like Dolly was mentioning a few minutes ago, being aware. Awareness is key. And, we work with people on, just being aware that your blood pressure is going up. And sometimes people don't know, how could you be aware of that? Well, there are places on your face for sure that's easy for you to recognize. The veins are starting to come out, in your temples. You can feel your face getting a little tighter. Your blood pressure is starting to go up. Your hands are starting to swell up a little bit. So there are a lot of ways you can notice that. There are ways you can notice the change in your heart rate. Well, there's some stress or trigger out there that's causing that to happen, and behavior is going to follow. Your blood pressure going up, your heart rate going up, your adrenaline increasing in your system. So being aware of that, and then being able to take some of the techniques and things that Rage has been working with you on and say, oh, okay, now I need to apply this. I need to do my box breathing or tactical breathing, whatever label you're giving to that 4-cycle breathing. I need to do that now so that I can get things calmed back down. So awareness alerts me that I need to use one of my techniques.
I think a huge thing that comes from what Dick said there is that making people feel comfortable about having anxiety and things like that is huge, especially when you're doing box breathing, or as you called it, tactical breathing, any of those breathing techniques. If somebody's not open and comfortable with talking about something, they're not going to do something to the fullest effect. And guiding them through a direct conversation with direct questioning, hey, how does that make you feel? Don't ask them a question where they can turn it around. Ask them a question that says, hey, what preceded this? What was the next step in this thing? And leading them out of that situation can be huge. But yeah, Dick, what you're saying, the nail on the head.
I was thinking also at that thing, it was giving me thoughts about how anxiety can lead to kind of 2 things. There's a short term where when your anxiety gets to above a certain point, you have an acute reaction, which could be an explosion. It could be, rage. It could be slamming doors, leaving home, quitting on a partner. There could be all kinds of things that happen as a result of that, that you kind of snap. You go on a binge, you have a fight, all of those things. And then there's the more subtle stuff as well, which is like the longer term effects of low level anxiety, which is it eats away at you to a point where your resilience becomes lower and lower, and you kind of cave in and you burn out, or you could experience depression, or you could experience a constant simmering resentment, because you can have different emotions as a response to this sort of underlying anxiety that's going on. Is that fair?
Yes, I mean it's there, and it does eat away at you, and you're not aware of it necessarily in the beginning, unless you have pretty high self-awareness and you're picking up on it. One of the things with the arsenal that we talk about is that if you're not getting enough rest, your brain doesn't recover well enough at night. And if I come into work in the morning and pass one of my guys, and they say, you didn't get a lot of sleep last night, did you? And I'll just use this opportunity to say that last night we had our national college football championship game to determine who was the big guy for the college game. So Alabama and Georgia played for the national championship last night, and Georgia's the champion today. So when I came in this morning, everyone knew I probably stayed up and watched that. But the question was, you didn't get much sleep last night. Why would you say that? You're a little grumpy this morning. Oh, well, actually, I was pretty happy this morning, but normally, staying up that late, I'd be a little grumpy. But because we know that when your brain gets tired, you are a little prickly, a little grumpy when you come in. And every one of these 7 best practices has a little indicator like that you get from taking the arsenal that tells you, here's how you're going to behave. You're going to kind of lead with this tomorrow when this starts to happen to you. So those are signs that you can look to see where you are yourself. And then, here's some things I can do. I might need a little power nap this afternoon. So I might take a little 20-minute nap between 2 and 3 o'clock this afternoon to, regenerate a little bit.
One thing I loved about the Arsenal program, it was like a magic mirror that showed me things that I normally wouldn't be able to see if I just looked at myself in the mirror. Maybe I could see like I was stressed or something, or my sleep's a little bit with bags under my eyes, and this was, it's a better insight than any other thing that I've taken so far. So kudos on that, by the way, you and your team.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and one of the things, I would just plug it one more time. If you haven't taken it yet, and you guys should, if you haven't taken it, you need to go out and take it. But it's going to give you a lot of insight. And one thing it does not do, it does not ask you every third question, have you thought about harming yourself today? It's not like any of the questionnaires you've taken from VA or any place else. It's just constantly asking you that question. And there's a reason they do that. The Arsenal doesn't do that. So, people are pleasantly surprised when they take it, and it never saw that question pop up. But, like Jordan's saying, it gives you a lot of insight about yourself, a nice snapshot right in front of you, and some things you can go work on. And then you come back 6 months or so later and you do it again, and you'll see the changes, because everything on there is dynamic, and you can change anything. You can make it better or you can make it worse. So you can come back and see where you are.
I remember in my 20s, I experienced anxiety attacks, and I was in a very difficult situation with an ill relative and things, and I felt very trapped, and feeling trapped in, you know, financially, or, you know, in terms of your family group or your relationships. Feeling trapped can lead to a very strong sense of anxiety. It might not be a fear of a threat or something, but it's actually just feeling like you can't control anything. It's all wrong. Everything's bad. And that sort of thing eats away at you. And I remember the one thing I picked up back then was you can control your environment in a way. You can turn the lighting down. You can get comfortable. You can put yourself into, you know, you can focus on your breathing, and you can put yourself in a better position. And now just lying on a comfortable position isn't necessarily going to solve, you know, a feeling like, oh, I'm going to have a heart attack, anxiety attack feeling. But the fact that you're telling yourself you can do something about it, and you're acting on that, and you're changing things, and you're seeing the reaction, it gives you back the control. And so you start to calm down, and you know, it starts to take away because the thing's feeding the fire, you know. So it's like you put the walls down, and like in a reactor, and you stop the reaction from happening. And I think Arsenal is something you can do that's very easy. It takes 10 minutes, and it's the first step. You can start to take back control and do something.
Yeah, that is the thing with it gives you a good indication of what is currently going on with you that you hadn't possibly thought about. As I alluded to earlier, well, I didn't allude to earlier because that was in the previous conversation that we had. But I realized that to deal with my anxiety, I was doing an excessive amount of fitness. Which I've now cut back on and doing the sort of fitness that I was doing. But I didn't realize that as a problem until I'd done the sort of Arsenal and gone, actually, that's not so good. And things like nutrition. My nutrition was terrible. I wasn't drinking water, or it was all carbonated drinks and stuff like that. So there were these elements that I were doing that I hadn't noticed that were really impacting on everything else. Because if I just get a few of those in line, a few of the easy wins, you know, I think I remember at the time saying, if I get a few of those easy wins in line, everything else will become easier. And it just gives you those sort of, right, what can I do that's an easy win for this situation now to help me? And yeah, that's one of the things that Arsenal does, which is really good. Just lets you know what you can do for an easy win.
Yeah, and all of the 7 best practices they're all integrated. And you know, if I get better rest, I have more energy to exercise with. If I do exercise, it will start to cause me to want to have better nutrition. So I start eating better. That helps my exercise. It helps me get more rest. It helps me with my attitude. It helps me utilize my support group better. It helps me learn better, keep my brain sharper. And all of these things, you know, just interact with each other. And when you improve one of them, they have an impact on the others. And you begin to recognize that you're getting more control and that you can control things. You know, a little bit at a time, but you can build up control, reduce your anxiety, and you can really change your whole life around.
Well, thank you, Dick, and thank you to Jordan and Andrew and Austin and the other Austin, Rage and Dolly. I think today has been a really interesting sort of exploration of anxiety, but also covering what we can do about it. And I think what we all do, the guys here on the podcast, is we talk to our peer group. We have, Dolly's always asking me how I'm doing. I ask him how he's doing. We're always connecting. You guys do the same thing, I'm sure. And by creating just a friendly working environment to talk to people, to ask those sorts of questions, is one thing we can all do. If anyone's watching this who isn't experiencing anxiety, you can help other people by just being a little bit aware that other people may be having problems and maybe struggling, and just be there for, to create a nice friendly place to be around, and not just take for granted that everyone's okay. But
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate all of your examples, your sharing, your ideas. This is all very helpful. I really appreciate what you've done today, and hopefully maybe we can have the link to the Arsenal site, the MVG Arsenal site, pop up on the end of this video. As you finish tweaking it, and have that site come up while we're waiting on the MVG site to get it on there so people can find it easily. But if you want to go take to Arsenal and you're a vet, a member of MVG, you go to the link that we're going to share with you and take it.
Thanks for having us, guys. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was nice meeting you.
It's nice to meet all of you.